う見てもヤバいやつだ。これは全然効かない。バチか。これがダメならバチ。
This anime tells the story of a young man named Takumi Iruma who is accidentally summoned to another world called Milgard. This mistake occurred because the kingdom of Sidonia forcibly summoned heroes, disrupting the world order and angering the goddess Norn. Heroes usually appear directly in Sidonia, but since Takumi was not meant to be there, the goddess transported him to another country. Feeling guilty and responsible, she granted Takumi special powers and a status screen with various profession options. If he wanted to be an adventurer, Takumi could choose to be a swordsman, mage, or a fighter. However, since he had no interest in fighting, he chose professions like a healer, alchemist, or blacksmith. The goddess gathered her power into a crystal, infused it into Takumi's soul, bid him farewell, and sent him to the new world. On the continent of Asgard, Takumi awoke with a new, quite handsome face. He found money, food, and a storage item left by the goddess. After trying out magic and checking his status bar, he found some wood and successfully made a spear. Furthermore, he acquired the carpentry skill and also gathered many herbs thanks to his observation skill. Shortly after, a girl screamed for help as she was being chased by a flesh-eating horned rabbit. Takumi managed to kill it and unintentionally obtained the swordsman profession. The girl took him to Board Village, where her family then offered Takumi a place to stay. Since there was no inn, the villagers even built a house for him. They were impressed because, besides being an alchemist, Takumi could also use magic. After his house was completed, Takumi changed his profession to alchemist and blacksmith. He also learned metalworking from the village chief, increasing his alchemist and blacksmith levels. Takumi then learned to make potions. When he compared his concoction with one from the village chief, the results were different. His potion contained a more concentrated magical energy. He later tried a recovery spell in an extreme way by eating a poisonous plant. After surviving, he acquired the poison resistance skill. However, a giant wild boar suddenly attacked him, shattering his weapon and rendering his magic ineffective. Fortunately, a poisonous spider joined the fight against the boar. In desperation, Takumi used a surgical spell and managed to defeat the king of the wild boars. As a thank you, he healed the spider that had helped him. Takumi was initially reluctant to keep the creature, but its sad gaze melted his heart. He named it Keed because the pattern on its back resembled a maple leaf. Keed fully recovered and became loyal to him. The villagers were shocked when Takumi returned with the carcass of the wild boar and a giant spider on his back. But they welcomed him joyfully. His presence brought new life to the village, and even the goddess Norn herself praised Takumi's hard work. One day, Takumi woke up to find himself wrapped in threads of spider silk spun by Keed. It turned out Keed had done this because she felt her master was too busy and rarely had time to play with her. Realizing this, Takumi decided to take a day off to spend time with Keed. The spider was overjoyed, to the point that Martha, who witnessed the scene, misunderstood. She thought Takumi was being preyed upon. After Takumi explained, Martha calmed down and even became interested in the quality of Keed's silk. She thought the thread could be a potential source of income. However, when Keed was given the task of producing more silk, she ended up rejecting Takumi's invitation to play, citing her busy schedule. Takumi then went to see Baban to have some protective gear made. There, Banga arrived and heard about Takumi's plans to travel. He suggested that Takumi go to Bolton, a large city rich in materials and full of opportunities. Baban added that a merchant from Bolton would be arriving next week, so Takumi could travel with them. Takumi expressed his gratitude to the villagers for their constant support. On his way home, Takumi met Martha, who was about to dispose of some poisonous meat. According to her, that part was actually the most delicious, but it was just difficult to clean. Takumi offered to use his purification magic. This shocked Martha, who then seriously warned him not to carelessly display his light magic. The reason was that it could make him a target for those seeking to exploit his power. Fortunately, the villagers could be trusted to keep the secret. A week later, Takumi helped build a wall and a water-drawing device to make village life easier. When the merchant group from Bolton arrived, they were astonished to see the large wall surrounding the village. The group's leader, named Paypek, who was also Banga's friend, introduced himself to Takumi. Before leaving, Takumi gave Banga some of his homemade potions, which caught Paypek's attention. All the villagers gathered to see him off. Martha gave him a cloak made by the villagers as a token of their appreciation, and Takumi felt grateful for having met them. During the journey by carriage, Takumi met a group of novice adventurers called the Lion's Fang. They were tasked with escorting Papek. Along the way, Papek asked Takumi to sell his healing potions, and Takumi agreed. However, not long after, their carriage was attacked by a pack of goblins. Fortunately, the Lion's Fang managed to handle the situation. After 3 days, the group arrived in the city of Bolton. Following the Lion's Fang's advice, Takumi registered with the Adventurers Guild to get an identification card, allowing him to enter and leave the city freely. Takumi then met with Papek to sell his potions. Since he didn't have a place to stay yet, Papek suggested he rent a house owned by his company. It was a large, inexpensive house that even had a workshop space. Takumi agreed to take it. One day on his way to the market, Takumi caught a whiff of a pungent odor coming from the city's drainage system. The city usually called upon priests to purify the drains periodically. The reason was that purification tools were extremely rare and expensive. In his new home, Takumi had created a magic purification toilet that could reduce waste. Although it drained a significant amount of his magical energy, the invention was astonishing because it meant Takumi possessed the incredibly rare light magic. Takumi asked to keep it a secret, but the other party instead wanted to order 100 units of the toilet. Since accomplishing that task alone was impossible, he suggested that Takumi acquire a contract slave he could trust to keep the secret. He also warned that if Takumi's ability were exposed, the Holy Light Church of the Sidonia Empire would surely exploit him. Although reluctant, Takumi had no other choice. Moreover, the Adventurers Guild had just sent a mission letter. So he followed the advice. They went to the most renowned slave company in Bolton, the Mulan Company. There, Takumi was amazed by the beautiful plants and even met a beautiful elf. However, the elf coldly shooed him away. Takumi was then summoned to the office of the slave company owned by a mature woman named Mulan. Since Takumi seemed uncomfortable with the concept of slavery, Mulan explained that a slave contract included rights that the master was obligated to fulfill: food, shelter, and clothing. Both parties were forbidden from endangering each other's lives. Slaves could not be forced to do things outside the contract and were prohibited from leaking the master's secrets. After hearing this explanation, Mulan asked about Takumi's needs. He replied that he was solely focused on his craft. But lately, he had been overwhelmed, having to go on missions while also managing the house. He hoped for someone who could protect him on duty and also handle household chores. Shortly after, a girl named Maria was introduced. She had been kidnapped by bandits as a child and now had no family. Maria was skilled in reading, writing, arithmetic, and housekeeping. Takumi honestly explained how heavy the housework would be. He felt a cute girl like Maria shouldn't have to bear such a burden. Maria blushed and misunderstood, even asking if she would also have to sleep with him. A flustered Takumi quickly replied that it wasn't necessary. Finally, they reached an agreement. Mulan then added that she currently didn't have a combat slave that met Takumi's needs. But Maria interrupted, reminding her that Sophia was still available. Mulan had been hiding her. However, Takumi was curious and wanted to meet her. Sophia was an elf whose race was destroyed 50 years ago. She had lost her left ear, her left hand was crippled, her left leg was disabled, and her characteristic elf elemental magic was sealed. Despite this, Takumi insisted on speaking with her. When they met, Takumi gently touched Sophia's cheek. This allowed him to glimpse her status. He was shocked to find that Sophia's level was actually very high. He was confident he could heal her curse, and if successful, Sophia would return to being a very powerful figure. Seeing Takumi's determination, Mulan laughed in relief and finally handed Sophia over to him. The contract was made with Mulan herself as the binding witch. Afterwards, Sophia and Maria bathed together. However, Sophia remained suspicious because Takumi's contract had blank sections. There was no information about his rank, place of birth, or family origin. She felt Takumi was hiding something significant. But during dinner, Takumi intentionally sat with them without distinguishing status. This increased their trust in him. A few days later, Takumi went to Papek's house to buy something. On the way, he found a church that turned out to worship the goddess Norn. He went in to pray and express his gratitude. However, at the same time, Takumi felt confused because goddess Norn herself was disparaging the Sidonia Empire, even though the Sidonia Empire controlled this world's religion. This confusion was answered directly by the goddess. She explained that this world had two religions: the Church of the Creator, which worshipped her, and the Holy Light Church, which actually had no god. The Holy Light Church had repeatedly tried to destroy the Church of the Creator through forceful means. Norn asserted that she did not interfere in human affairs, and due to her negligence, Sidonia had successfully used summoning magic, which dragged Takumi to this world. The blessings granted to him were gradually fading, and wicked people would start approaching him. His path in life would be very difficult, but the choice to become strong remained in his hands. Returning to his residence, Takumi had just come home carrying a large package wrapped in magic paper. A suspicious Sophia secretly spied on his activities. It turned out Takumi was experimenting by injuring himself and then healing his wounds. He even muttered, blaming Maria, which made Sophia try to attack him to make him talk. However, Sophia became exhausted due to her curse. Eventually, Takumi struggled but managed to heal her. When she woke up, Sophia asked Takumi why he had hurt himself. Calmly, he replied that he had to train and enhance his light magic to be able to heal Sophia's curse. Hearing this explanation, Sophia felt relieved yet guilty. Because of this, she resolved to dedicate her life to always accompanying Takumi as repayment for healing her. The days passed by. After completing the toilet order for the merchant Paypek, Takumi wanted to try going on an adventure. Initially, Maria only intended to stay home, but she wanted to join so badly that she ended up pleading with Takumi. Unable to harden his heart, Takumi allowed her to come along. For their adventure, they needed weapons. Sophia meticulously explained the specifications of the weapon she needed. Then, Takumi began forging using magic crystals. As a result, Sophia's weapon was engraved with a wing logo, while Maria's spear bore a fire logo. Both weapons were also reinforced with magic. Takumi even briefly considered making a dagger that could be stored on a maid's thigh, but he blushed just imagining it. He also intended to make armor and clothes for them. However, too embarrassed to take their measurements directly, he used mannequins of the same size. A few days later, their outfits were completed. Takumi was very satisfied as the results matched his taste. Even the dagger on Maria's thigh looked very fitting for her. He also gave them special rings to serve as a medium for releasing magical energy. After all preparations were complete, the three of them registered at the Adventurers Guild to take on a mission. However, a group of thuggish-looking men started harassing Maria and Sophia while looking down on Takumi. They were veteran adventurers. Takumi was still considered weak. Although fearful inside, Takumi stepped forward to confront them. He retorted by belittling them, saying they were no match for a lion's fang. One thug tried to punch him, but ended up hurting his own hand because Takumi had coated his body with a hardening spell, making it as hard as diamond. The commotion was stopped by the guild master. He asked Takumi for an explanation. After hearing the receptionist's testimony and Takumi's direct explanation, the guild master, named Barak, began to understand. The receptionist, named Hans, possessed the ability to detect magic and suggested that Takumi's rank be raised. He also gave them a special mission so that the entire party could level up together. Hans gave them 3 missions: hunt goblins, hunt kobolds, and collect marrow plants. With the help of Kaid as their scout, they found a horde of goblins hiding behind some bushes. Takumi found the unusually large number of goblins strange. Sophia explained that this happens when a goblin general sets up a camp. Usually, 5 rank D parties are needed to defeat them. But Sophia devised a strategy, pooling their magic together to perform a wide area attack and reduce the enemy's numbers first. The plan worked and they conquered the goblin camp. However, upon their return, Guild Master Barak severely scolded them, stating their reckless actions could have cost them their lives. As the tension mounted, Kaid suddenly emerged from a dimensional space after evolving, stunning everyone into silence. Barak finally gave in, chose to raise their rank, and also gave them a reward. After their business at the guild was concluded, Paypek arrived with a message from Marquis Godwin. The Marquis expressed his gratitude, as thanks to Takumi, the city's sanitation had greatly improved and a disease outbreak was prevented. Furthermore, Takumi had also managed to eradicate a goblin camp that even the knights had bypassed. Because of this, Marquis Godwin felt indebted to Takumi. He also warned Takumi to remain vigilant, as sooner or later, the Sidonia Empire would begin to make its move. A few days later, Takumi intended to upgrade his party's equipment with stronger materials. Hans suggested that Takumi mine for the raw ore himself and then process it with his own hands. The mine was located in Horus City, northwest of the Baroka Kingdom. However, there was a problem. The mine could only be entered by members of the Blacksmiths' Union. Fortunately, Takumi could gain entry by taking a mission to hunt monsters inside the mine. Additionally, the barracks commander added another task: to collect Treyant wood, as supplies in Tan City were running low. Furthermore, Takumi also accepted an escort mission for a miner. The journey to Horace normally took 7 days with a regular horse, or 4 days if using a monster horse. Unfortunately, the Union could only provide a regular horse because the monster horses were being used by the Lion's Fang party. Takumi then went to meet the merchant, Paypek. He was accompanied by Rail to borrow his monster horse. Upon returning home, Rail felt envious because Takumi was always surrounded by women, while he himself had been living alone for a long time. In the living room, Takumi discussed the Union's mission with Maria, Sophia, and Keed. They all agreed for him to take the mission. 3 days later, their mission began. The escort request came from a blacksmith named Gambo, and they immediately departed for Horace. At the same time, the Union received a report from the Horace branch stating that the monsters in the Forest of Death were becoming more ferocious. Unfortunately, this news did not reach Takumi. The Western commander could only pray for their safety. On the journey, Takumi's party first carried out the mission to hunt treant trees. Initially, Takumi easily defeated one tree. However, a herd of treants soon arrived and surrounded them. Sophia quickly formulated a strategy. She assigned roles so they could attack simultaneously. Takumi coated his sword with fire magic and slashed the treant's core, burning it to ashes. The next day, they arrived at the mining city of Horace. To enter the mine, Takumi took on a mission to hunt an iron mole. When the iron mole surfaced, he was ready, cast a light magic spell, and promptly killed it. After returning to Bolton, Takumi asked Gambo to teach him how to process and forge mithril. It took him several days to learn the technique. Finally, the new protective equipment was successfully completed, complete with spears imbued with the respective elemental attributes of each party member. Rumor about the Kingdom of Barkula having a magical purification device to clean its drainage system finally reached Sidonia. A representative of the Church of Holy Light came and demanded that the right to the purification magic belong to them. They even requested a patent for the purification magic circle used in toilets. Because the king refused to hand it over, the representative threatened to have the person who created the purification device handed over to them. However, the king firmly refused. He didn't even mind if all the Holy Light priests left his kingdom. This news of the refusal reached Takumi through Paypek. He also explained that besides the Holy Light, the kingdom of Baruka had another religion, the Creator Church, which worships the goddess Nor. The Holy Light, on the other hand, worships the god Anat. Holy Light priests often charged expensive fees for their purification services. In addition to bringing that news, Paypek also conveyed the king's message, who wanted to meet with Takumi. Although the king rejected the church's demands, he did not mean to be angry. He actually hoped Takumi would be willing to meet him. Before accepting the invitation, Takumi went to the church to pray. This time, the goddess Norn truly showed herself. She even demanded a sweet food offering from Takumi. But before that, Takumi asked her something. Was Anat really a goddess besides herself? With a jealous look on her face, the goddess Nor replied that there was no other goddess besides her. She was annoyed that Takumi was curious about another religion. Takumi immediately calmed her down. He explained that he only wanted to know more because Sidonia was getting closer to catching up with him. For his next journey, Takumi wanted to make a horse-drawn carriage and also find a monster horse. Maria enthusiastically explained that in the Forest of Death, there are many types of legendary horses like unicorns, griffins, and dragon horses. They agreed to look for a dragon horse because it was faster and had extraordinary stamina. However, while searching, their attention was diverted, making Kite annoyed and choosing to walk alone. Unexpectedly, he found a badly wounded dragon horse. Remembering how Takumi had helped him in the past, Kite was determined to help it. Unfortunately, he was soon surrounded by a swarm of giant ants. Panicking, Kite tried to call his master, but there was no answer. Despite being scared, he still tried to protect the dragon horse. Fortunately, Takumi arrived just in time to save him. When other monsters started to arrive, he immediately put Kite and the dragon horse into his dimensional bag. But because it drained too much magical energy, Takumi fainted for half a day. In that state, Sophia used Takumi's magical energy to contact Kite in the dimension and ask him to come out. But the dragon horse could become confused if it was just released. Sophia then suggested Kite create a barrier so the dragon horse would feel safe. A little while later, Takumi regained consciousness. He immediately visited the dragon horse, whose wounds were now starting to heal. Takumi then tried to tame it and restore its condition until it was fully recovered. After succeeding, he named the horse Sabaki. Takumi is busy as usual. Seeing him constantly working, Maria and Sophia start to worry about his health. Takumi even went straight to the guild in the morning to register Sabaki. Meanwhile, Sophia thought of looking for someone knowledgeable in alchemy to help Takumi. Unfortunately, there were no suitable slaves at the Mulan company at the moment. The carriage made by Takumi is finally finished. Everyone is surprised to see its spacious and luxurious interior. Takumi deliberately added a space expansion spell so that even when traveling at full speed, the bumps are barely felt inside the carriage. A week later, they depart for Balakados, the capital of the Baruka Kingdom. As usual, Papek looks excited every time Takumi creates something. Even Marquis Godwin is willing to pay a high price just to own the horse-drawn carriage. Upon arriving at the palace, Papek asks Takumi to make a similar carriage for himself. To him, this is the quickest way to introduce Takumi's talent to the king. Takumi estimates it will take 5 days to complete another carriage. In addition, he needs a fairly large plot of land. Papek is willing to help provide the space. Takumi then tells Maria and Sophia that he will build the carriage on the land belonging to the Palom company. Sophia advises him to recruit a slave who can help with alchemy, as she and Maria cannot support Takumi in that area. They emphasize that Takumi's health is more important. Takumi then consults with the owner of the Palom slave trading company. Meanwhile, outside, Maria and Sophia are looking for Keed, who is wandering around. During the search, Sophia hears a scream from a corridor. There, she finds a fox girl terrified of Keed. Sophia immediately scolds Keed, then helps the girl to her feet and calms her down. At that moment, she also finds the girl's book, which turns out to contain alchemy notes. Sophia is surprised to find that this fox girl has the same interest as her master. Fate brings the girl and Takumi together. Her name is Rei. Sophia seems happy to see their meeting. When interviewed, Rei is initially insecure and afraid of being rejected, as in her previous experiences. But upon hearing that Takumi actually needs someone skilled in alchemy, she becomes excited. Unfortunately, the bitter memory of being looked down upon makes her gloomy again. Sophia then explains that Rei actually learned many spells, including alchemy, on her own. To test Rei, Takumi gives her a simple alchemy circle on a piece of paper. Rei looks very scared that her answer might be wrong. Even though she knows the answer, she is hesitant. Finally, she answers while crying. Takumi smiles and offers her his hand. Rippa is confused for a moment because the alchemy circle she knows is different from Takumi's. Takumi confirms her explanation. According to him, it is natural for every region to have differences. Hearing this, Rippa feels relieved. She can now support her family and is also happy to have a kind and friendly colleague. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Sidonia, the Baruka kingdom has rejected requests for information regarding the purification spell 3 times. Therefore, the queen intends to spread a rumor that the Baruka kingdom has insulted the Church of the Holy Light. With that, the Holy Light forces will surely move and attack. The day of the meeting with King Barkula finally arrived. Takumi's carriage was ready in the palace gardens. When King Barkula approached him, Takumi had no idea that the man in front of him was the supreme leader of the country. It was only when the merchants Papek and Marcus came and greeted them that Takumi realized the person he was talking to was the king. Takumi was so shocked that he froze. However, the king did not come with a palace entourage or ministers. He simply wanted to meet privately and thank the alchemist, who had been of great service, in person. Meanwhile, in the Sidonia Empire, the empress succeeded in finding the purification magic tool stolen from Barkula. For her, the tool was a cursed, heretical object that must be destroyed immediately. She even accused the mastermind behind the tool's creation of being in Bolton. That same day, Ripa officially registered as an adventurer and joined Takumi's party. Han, the receptionist, asked Takumi to think of a name for their group. But Takumi had never prepared for such a thing, as his goal in adventuring was not to complete missions but to learn magic and alchemy. The head of the Barak Guild came after hearing Takumi wanted to learn to fight. He trained him hard and with discipline. Barak would even throw Takumi around mercilessly whenever he gave a nonchalant answer. Takumi tried asking his friends, but still couldn't come up with a good idea. On the other hand, the reincarnated heroes who had been training for a few weeks began to master their powers. Unfortunately, their personalities also changed. They became rude and difficult to control. Only Akane remained vigilant and kept her sanity. She learned that the teachings of the Church of the Creator considered all races to be the children of Norn, while the Church of the Holy Light placed humans above all else. Akane wondered why she was summoned to a country ruled by the Church of the Holy Light. Sometime later, Takumi received an escort mission from Papek's company. He initially refused the mission, but since the Lion's Fong group was busy with another mission, only Takumi could be relied on. Their journey proceeded without a hitch. Sabaki was even able to take out a group of wolves and goblins by himself. Upon arriving in the city of Kelbis, they enjoyed a milk-based cream soup. Takumi was surprised because it tasted just like food on Earth. He could even taste cheese, which made him nostalgic. But Takumi didn't want to dwell on the past. He chose to enjoy his new life with his friends. Sophia also felt the same way. She felt as if she had regained the wings she had once broken, and it was all thanks to Takumi. Remembering someone who had given him wings in the past, Takumi finally decided to name their party Wing Nor. But upon their return to Bolton, their house was infiltrated by strangers. Takumi was hit by an airborne paralyzing poison, leaving him and his friends helpless. Luckily, Keed had been hiding and attacked at the right moment. With Keed's help, Takumi was able to immobilize the intruders. After healing his friends, he turned the criminals over to the guild. The attackers at Takumi's house turned out to be the Luminastra Forces, a radical group of followers of the Church of Holy Light, known for their willingness to kill anyone who opposes their teachings. According to Godwin, the reason for the attack was none other than Takumi's purification device. Takumi had suspected this from the start, as the device caused the church's priests to lose their jobs purifying the drainage system. For his safety, Takumi had considered hiding abroad, but was advised to stay. The majority of the country's population were followers of the Creator Church and would surely protect him. Furthermore, Sophia promised to protect him with her life. When Takumi went to the Adventurers Guild, he heard that the rumor of the attack on his house had spread widely and that his head was now worth a very high price. Because of this, he was warned to be more careful. At dinner, Takumi discussed security with his friends. To prevent strangers from entering, he planned to create a magical barrier device to install around the house. The next day, Takumi, Raipa, and Sophia worked together to create a magic pattern. After the pattern was formed, Takumi sprinkled magical powder to activate it. While everyone was busy, Kaide was happily playing with a small golem. Seeing this, Raipa thought that having a golem as an additional team member would be perfect. Unfortunately, Takumi could not yet create a golem because he was unable to form its magic core. For now, he could only focus on installing the house barrier. In the Sidonian Empire, news spread that the Nirmanastra forces had been defeated. This led the palace to assume that the Church of Holy Light's plan had been exposed. Takumi began to think about how to create a golem to guard his house, but despite trying various magic crystals, he failed to form a core. Keed then asked if golems could be tamed in the wild, which made Takumi think that it might be possible. After discussing it, they decided to go to the Rocky Lands to try and tame a golem. The usual way to defeat a golem is to destroy the magic crystal in the center of its body, but Takumi was reluctant to attack it. He chose to face the golem directly. To his surprise, Takumi was able to connect with it. It turned out the golem was a guardian of the ruins belonging to the goddess Nor, so it could recognize Takumi's divine blessing. He easily tamed the golem and named it Titan. Meanwhile, at the Sidonia Palace, a conflict arose among the heroes. Akane argued with Yamato and Akira over their increasingly inappropriate behavior. Takumi wanted to modify Titan's body to suit his needs, but first felt there was something more important to do, releasing his slaves from their contracts, as it was too dangerous for them to be near him. However, Maria, Sophia, and the others strongly rejected this decision. They did not want to be separated from Takumi. Maria even challenged him to a fight if he insisted. Realizing their feelings, Takumi finally apologized and abandoned his plan. Could only pray that Sidonia was truly intent on improving its country. The Sidonia heroes then began their journey. But behind it all, the Empress prayed to a statue of Anat, which was emanating negative energy. On the other hand, Takumi heard news of the heroes and began to suspect that they might also be from Japan. He took on a mission to again escort the Papek company. On the way to Balakados, the heroes' true colors began to show. Akira and Yamato acted very arrogantly. They even openly wanted elf slaves to satisfy their lust. Deep down, Akane felt disgusted and could only hope that in Balakados she could find a way out. After arriving at the Adventurers Guild, they caused a ruckus with anyone who dared to get in their way. Upon seeing Sophia and Mani, Akira arrogantly demanded Takumi to sell them to him. Takumi flatly refused. Even Sophia and Mani clearly refused to go with them, even though they knew that Akira and Yamato were heroes. Angrily, the two attacked Takumi, but were soundly defeated for underestimating him. The adventurers who witnessed the incident sided with Takumi, making the heroes' party look even worse. They left while threatening Takumi for opposing the Holy Church. Before leaving, Akane apologized to Takumi and immediately introduced herself. From their conversation, Akane realized that Takumi was also from Japan. Lulu to live with him. The Marquis of course agreed. However, He also gave news about the cruelty of the Sidonia heroes who slaughtered the residents of Samander. Hearing that, Akane felt guilty for not being able to stop them. Even so, she was determined that when the time came to meet again, she would not run away again. Takumi then prayed to be able to meet the goddess Nor. He asked, did his arrival 1 year earlier in this world have a certain reason? Because it seems that Sidonia and the heroes are now starting to interfere with his life. The goddess Nor gave no clues. She only answered that it all depended on Takumi's own choices. Takumi promised to protect everything that was precious to him in this world. He smiled, feeling happy to be able to live a meaningful life.